Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Health Babes podcast. I am your host, Dr. Crystal Hone, and I am joined with my co-host, Dr. Becky Campbell. Today's episode is sponsored by Sunlighten, and we are going to be talking all about heavy metals today. So let's just kind of dive in and talk about what are toxic metals and how they can damage the body. So really and truly, heavy metals don't have any physiological beneficial role to the body whatsoever. And when we get exposed to these, which we all are exposed to them, right? Wouldn't you say, Beck?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So when we get exposed to them, they can really start to impact our detox pathways. And if we're already a really bad detoxer, they can start to accumulate in the body. So what are some of the symptoms, Beck, that we can start to get with heavy metals?
Yeah, so I had mercury toxicity pretty bad, and I got that from my amalgam fillings. So if you're about my age or older, you were probably given amalgam fillings at the dentist, the silver fillings that are filled with mercury. And those fillings, they off gas. So, like when you're putting them in, and if you get them removed, it's the worst. And then while you have them in your mouth, they can constantly be putting metals into the body. So, if you do go get them removed, you have to go to a biological dentist. And I did not do that. So, I had 5 put in when I was a kid and 5 removed at one time as an adult, and I really struggled after that. So it can lead to a lot of thyroid issues, actually. You can find mercury in the thyroid tissue. It can give you a lot of brain fog. And, there's been things that have shown people with Alzheimer's have
Mhm.
been misdiagnosed with Alzheimer's because they have heavy metals in the brain. So it really loves tissues like that. So brain fog, you can have weight gain, trouble losing weight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anxiety and depression. I mean, think about that. If you're having this in your brain, you can definitely feel anxious. You can have hormone dysfunction. It can interfere with the sex and adrenal hormones. So there's a lot of different symptoms, fatigue, you name it. I mean, it kind of goes along with a lot of different things that we find in functional medicine. But one thing I do want to say is it's not something we tend to go right out
Right.
of the gate, because it can be challenging to move metals out of the body, especially if you're sensitive. And we work with a lot of sensitive people. So, we're going to talk about some gentle ways and, what you can do and even how you can know if you've been exposed to it. So,
Yeah. And I want to make a little note too, even just going back to what Beck was talking about with some of the symptoms, like with fatigue, a big thing to understand with metals is they really impact our minerals, right? They
mhm.
can really affect our minerals in the body. So they really attach, so metals and minerals, they kind of attach to the same receptor sites on our cells, right? Our mitochondria. So if we're having impacts with like ATP, our energy is going to be really low.
Yeah.
So fatigue is probably one of the biggest symptoms we find, wouldn't you say, Beck,
But
with
yeah,
heavy? Yeah.
definitely.
So minerals, we'll talk more about what we do gently, when working with heavy metals in a little bit later, but remineralization, getting in really good minerals that can really start to help, the energy production and your fatigue when it comes to that.
Yeah, and heavy metals cause a lot of oxidative stress and inflammation, chronic inflammation. If you're one of those people who, let's say you did have those fillings and you're chronically inflamed, this might be something you want to look into. And they can interfere with metabolism. They can cause insulin resistance. So it really can cause a variety of issues.
Yeah.
So
So go
why
ahead.
don't you talk about which metals are the most common to find in
Yeah.
the body?
And before I get into that, let's just talk a little bit too about like where they come from, like
Mhm.
where we are getting exposed. Beck mentioned amalgam fillings, which is huge, but we can breathe these in, which we're again, if you think about it, we can't control everything, you guys. We're constantly exposed to things outside, so we can breathe them in. We can get some heavy metals through supplements, so you want to make sure that you're getting good quality supplements. even certain foods have high metals, right? So those are the main sources that we typically see it. And there's more common metals than others. Like if you were to do a metals test, which we'll talk about, the different tests that we like, but the most common ones that we see are mercury, aluminum, and arsenic. Now, mercury is usually found in fish, so you want to make sure you're having really good quality fish, because if you're eating fish all the time, it's bad quality. You can more than likely you're going to have some higher levels of mercury in your system.
And
Same,
that's why during pregnancy, you're not
yeah,
supposed to have tuna fish. Like canned tuna can be a really big source of mercury. And a lot of people eat canned tuna or grew up on canned tuna,
yeah.
so
I
grew
don't
up
think
having sandwiches every day and have no idea. And this can really be an issue down the road. It's not like you can't ever do that, but it's not something you want to make as a staple in your
no.
diet.
Yeah, and so with mercury, if we talk about fish, you can get mercury from the air too. And then of course we touched base on the amalgam filling. So, make sure you're searching out a bioidentical dentist. Most dentists aren't even working with mercury anymore. If they are, personally, I would run and find
I
some
know. I don't
that
think you're
doesn't.
allowed to.
I don't think so, but you never know these
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
Some of the old school docs, I mean, bless their hearts, but you really do want to be careful of that. And then aluminum. Aluminum, one of the biggest ways to get this is through actually breathing it in. It's a
Hmm.
big, big area in which we see that. This is why it's so important to work on your detox pathways, which we're going to talk about. And then, of course, aluminum with deodorants, guys. We can't preach it enough. I see all these ads. Do you see these lately with these powders of where they're blocking sweat? Like it's ads everywhere where people are trying to block sweating. And I'm like, no, sweating
Oh
is good.
gosh, I know you
And
want to
it's,
sweat. Well, people get Botox in their armpits.
yeah,
And that
yeah.
that always
Oh,
scares me because you don't want to stop that. That's our body's way of pushing things out. Also, aluminum foil, like
yep.
with baking and aluminum pans too.
Mhm.
So you got to be careful because that's going to be cooked into your food.
We need to normalize, going back to the deodorant, normalize sweating under the armpits.
Should we normalize smelling?
Well, we can help that area, but the sweating, we all know natural deodorants just don't work with sweating. If you're a
No.
sweater, it just doesn't work, right?
No,
So,
it doesn't. I've never found a natural deodorant that makes me as dry as like the non-natural
yeah,
deodorants, but I have found good ones that you don't smell, and
yeah,
you do sweat a little bit, but it's not, a huge thing. But you don't
right.
want to block that. You definitely don't want
No,
to block that.
you want to sweat. And then we have arsenic. So arsenic can be found in a lot of the foods. So like things like conventional eggs and like chicken, you want to have good sources of, different meat and things like that. What you're feeding your animals is important. This is where you can start to see high arsenic in a lot of these foods. And then cigarette smoke is really, really high in arsenic. So if you live with someone that, is smoking, or if you are a smoker, I mean, it's hard. I would really try to have them smoke outside if it's a habit that they can't kick. Hopefully they can, but it's a big area in which you can start to see arsenic, start to accumulate in the body.
I'd say lead too,
Mhm.
because I remember when we were in school and I left the one school and I moved to Iowa for a little while and I went to another school and I had to sign a waiver when I was
Wow.
moving into an apartment because they had lead paint. And I didn't know anything back then. So I'm like, whatever, I signed the waiver.
Yeah.
And I truly think that is where I really started to feel bad.
Mhm.
Like I started getting exercise intolerance when I lived there, which was so weird because I hadn't had that before. And also bathtubs,
Mhm.
right? You can get a lead exposure in older homes and bathtubs too.
Yeah.
So I
So
think
many.
that lead is definitely up there with those
Yeah.
common metals.
Yeah. Think about furniture too. Like this is even back in the day, cribs and paints, and
Hmm.
want to be careful what your babies are sucking on, the toys that they're playing with. I mean, this is where it can start, right? And I know
Yeah.
it can get cumbersome and overwhelming when you think about every little thing, but you really do need to be aware of that because there's a lot of things we can control easily too. So,
Yeah.
you want to dive into testing?
Yeah. So there are different tests that people offer There's a hair test, there's a urine test. Those are the most common methods. The issue that I have with a certain labs is that you need to provoke
Mhm.
your body to show kind of what you're holding on to as far as heavy metals go before doing these tests. And that's with something called DMSA. And that can be very problematic. It's a chelator. It can be very problematic for people if you're sensitive. And
Mhm.
so I never wanted to do this test, with my patients because I work with so many sensitive people.
Right.
And then if you do it without provoking it, you don't really get the right result. So that's kind of a faulty test method, in my opinion.
Mhm.
But there is a lab that we really like that we use in practice called Quicksilver Scientific. And they offer testing whether you're just looking for mercury or you're looking for mercury and other metals and even minerals too show up on that. It's a great test, and they use hair, urine, and blood all
Right.
together,
Yeah.
and they show how well you're pushing it out via the kidneys and the liver. So that's the test that we use. I love that test.
It's
And
really
again, we don't do this right up front. This is what we do with people who either know they have exposure and they want to know, or they've worked on the gut, they've worked on hormones, they've worked on brain retraining, they've worked on mold, and they're still not better. Then we start looking into metals. So because it can really flare people up. And also, if you're working on something like mold and you're using a binder and you're using gentle detox, you can grab metals too. So
Mhm.
that's just kind of a side note why we don't right out of the gate test everybody on heavy metals. But it is a great test, and it is something that you definitely should know, and it is something that can really be contributing to your health issues. So let's talk about chelation a little bit. So that's also, another way to say that is mobilization of metals. So who is that good for and who is it not good for?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. You're asking me.
Drinking that water.
Yes, I'm so thirsty today. I don't know what my problem is. So, for someone that is, like Becky mentioned, really sensitive, I personally wouldn't try to pull. I would really start to try to work on gentle detox pathways, maybe get them on really good, gentle, like binders and pulling agents that
Mhm.
are similar but not as potent, wouldn't you say? So things like cilantro, fulvic and humic acid, grapefruit pectin, these are some really good gentle binders. And I mostly work with those, Beck. I mean,
Yeah,
us, we really do work mostly with gentle because we find that it really does give a good result.
it
And
does.
most people want to feel good, when they're doing these things. But I do know a lot of practitioners will work with things like EDTA or DMSA and things like that. I just personally haven't worked a lot with them. I use more of those gentle binders.
I've
So you,
used EDTA. I've never used DMSA. DMSA is what when you hear people say, and this is something I don't hear as much anymore, but they'll say, I went and had chelation therapy done, like IV
yeah.
chelation. And, we would some people do great with it and some people don't, but that's typically what they're using. EDTA is something that if you have a high lead, that's something with the protocol that I tend to use with heavy metals in general. I will add EDTA if they have high lead. If I think you can tolerate it, which means if I think that you are a good detoxer,
Right.
because you never want to pull something and then not have it have anywhere to go.
Your
If you
body.
don't sweat and you don't poop and you don't pee and you just know that you don't detox well,
Right.
you're going to pull and then you're just going to start circulating those metals more, and that can be dangerous. So if you're working, you should be working with someone, in my opinion, if you're doing something like this. If you're
For
working with
sure.
someone, make sure that they're supporting your detox pathways first.
Yeah.
And then you can do things like the cilantro. I was telling Crystal the other day, I remember when I had mercury toxicity and I was eating cilantro and I was so dizzy and didn't know why. And now I know is because I was pulling the mercury. It really is a strong chelator. So, You can eat it. You can find it in supplements. There are supplements that have a mix of things. We like fulvic and humic acid. So Cellcore makes I think it's the
Great.
HMET binder is pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, and then you can even do like garlic, onion, shallots, like, sulfur rich foods can particularly help with lead, right? Is it lead? Yeah, lead from the body. And then selenium can be really helpful for binding to methyl mercury.
Yeah.
So, you can get that from like Brazil nuts, or you can take selenium. I mean, personally, I would probably take it. But
Yeah.
so those are some gentle ways that you can grab the metals. And if you want to go into, more of the DMSA or the EDTA, I would definitely do that working with a practitioner. And then what do we do next? Well, we want to push those metals out. So what you want to talk about some first steps with gentle detox?
Sure, sure. So let's say you're exposed, you know that you have heavy metals, or you're even thinking potentially, but you didn't do any testing. You're just like, nothing is getting better. We want some simple steps to get started, right? First and foremost, one thing to understand is metals really in fact affect our minerals, like I was talking a little bit about earlier. So even something as gentle as adding minerals back
Mm-hmm.
in is really important because it can help push the toxins, push the metals, right? And so some of these really gentle trace minerals that are really, really important are things like iron, iodine, zinc, like Becky mentioned, selenium, copper, chromium, manganese, molybdenum. These are really good, but you want to make sure that you're adding them more in the morning because they can impact sleep a little bit. Even if some of you are on some of these gentle minerals, some of these are a lot in like different thyroid supports. And if you are working with a
Mm-hmm.
practitioner like Beck and I, we always have you take those things more in the morning, right? Because we don't want that to impact your sleep.
And no
So,
iron without knowing you need iron.
yes,
Never, ever supplement iron if you don't know you're low.
it's so
But one thing that we always do while working with someone with, if we are pulling metals, we're checking iron because
yeah,
iron can go low while pulling.
it's
So
true.
you do need to, again, work with somebody who knows what they're doing. Or if you're doing this on your own, just go the gentle route, like do the cilantro, do what we're going to talk about soon with gentle detox, take minerals that do not include iron, stuff like that. You can do that stuff on your own.
Yeah. And then certain minerals too, like calcium, magnesium, and I did mention a little bit of zinc, but those can be more, taken more towards nighttime. They won't impact your sleep as much. But those are just some of the minerals that are really good to bring back into the body because, again, metals and minerals, like minerals are going to win. If you put them into the body, they're going to attach to those receptor sites, right? And just push those metals out of there. So it's really, really important. And it's a gentle thing you can do if you know you have heavy metals. So that's remineralization. And then, of course, diet is really important, you guys. So a mineral rich diet with organ meats, staying away from a lot of oxidizing foods, so industrial seed oils on our foods. You want to get in lots of color with antioxidants and minerals and vitamins and all those things, right? So we talk about diet a lot on here. You guys know what type of diet we stand for. It's low inflammatory, nutrient dense. And that's a really good diet to support your body while you're trying to get rid of metals. And then, of course, you want to talk a little bit more about other detox methods
Yeah.
back there. Yeah.
So castor oil packs over the liver is a probably a really good gentle first step that almost everybody can tolerate.
Yeah.
So, and you can start with 5 minutes and, and then we usually have our patients sleep with the pack on overnight because we like the pack. We'll link it in the show notes that ties on
Mhm.
and people just sleep with it and it's really good. So that dry brushing that helps with the lymphatic system. You can do lymphatic massage, you can do Epsom salt baths. And then my favorite is the infrared sauna. So I'm sure you've heard me talk about it a lot on the show. And it's really great with metals because I actually interviewed one of the co-founder of Sunlighten Sauna, the saunas we like, and her name is Connie Zach. So if you haven't listened to that episode, you should. But she got into working with the sauna company because her brother was really sick and no one knew what was wrong with him. And finally, his dentist said, I think you have heavy metal toxicity of mercury. And he said, you should try an infrared sauna. And this is, before they were real big.
Yeah.
And that's all he did. He just did the sauna and he got completely better. And so this is one of those things too that like we have people doing that for mold and just in general. So if you do think you have metals, doing the infrared sauna is really, really effective at helping you to push the metals out, the mold out, all the things. So I I know with me, I pulled as much as I could and pushed around my body as well as I could, but I've never been a good detoxer. So it wasn't until I started doing the sauna that I started actually being able to effectively push, these things out like heavy metals. So I have
Amazing.
just noticed feeling better and better and better and no more chemical sensitivities and, you know, just major differences since using the infrared sauna. So we'll put a link in the show notes, the one that we like. And we know not everybody can afford a sauna. It's definitely an investment. I mean, it's something that if you are willing to invest in, it would be my number one health hack.
100%.
But they also have, various levels. You can get a dome, which is the one you lay down and it's just kind of a dome that goes over you and it's much more inexpensive than the other ones. And then you can get a one person sauna, two person sauna, whatever. They have all different levels of what you can do. But if you're doing something by yourself and you don't want to work with somebody, get a sauna. Like really, really probably the biggest bang for your buck and the biggest health hack that I can say for sure.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And everybody needs to think about detox and sweating is something we all should be doing every day, just like eating healthy, exercising. We all have to be working on this because of what we're exposed to, even out of our control. Yes, there are certain people that have exposures to heavy metals from certain things, right? Their body's really overburdened, they have high levels. But even someone like me that I know that I'm not overburdened with this right now, but I'm exposed to it every day. I'm going to be working on sweating every single day. So even some gentle things like moving your body too, guys,
Yeah.
exercising, rebounding. I have a little trampoline that I bought from Amazon. Y'all should see me in my basement. And, it's cold. It's not outside. I just rebound a little bit too. It's so good for your lymphatic system. So sweating is so, so important and give it time. Like, how long do you think back it took you to start noticing? Because I noticed with you, because I work hand in hand with you every day for the
Mhm.
past couple of years. How long did you notice until you started feeling big differences after sweating every day in the sauna?
Um, Not that long,
I
like
know.
maybe a month. I mean, it was what I noticed the most was when I went into a store and I didn't have to like hold my breath and like run in and run out. I think I was at Pottery Barn and I was like, oh my gosh, I can sit here and sit on the couches and look through the rugs. And I was even sitting and they have this giant candle like on one of their
Oh,
coffee
yeah.
table
Yeah.
display. And I have that limbic system. My limbic system's going, oh, evacuate. But I didn't because I couldn't. I had to sit there for some reason and I was okay. And
Mm,
that was weird. I mean, I was not able to do that for probably a decade, so it's not long. It is the biggest, it's the thing that moved the needle the most for me because you
yes.
can go in and you can kill stuff and you can bind stuff, but if you're not pulling it out of your body,
Mhm.
then it's almost for nothing. So, or it can actually make you worse. So it was quick. It was pretty quick. So that's
Yeah.
why I'm always talking about the sauna because I wish that everyone could get one. I swear if I won the lottery, I would pick like 100 people and buy them each a sauna.
It is the best, one of the best things, that you can do. And again, if you can't afford one right now or it's not something that you're able to do, make sure you're sweating, like pushing
Yeah.
sweat out, exercising,
Yep.
rebounding, moving your body. Stop wearing the blocking deodorants. Let your armpits sweat.
Yeah. Just don't
There's
wear gray shirts.
That's true. Just don't wear gray shirts. Know the quality and the types of materials you're buying. Forget it. I could never, I mean, this is TMI, but I could never buy like silk shirts. Forget it.
No, gosh,
I
no.
would be pitting out.
I know. Same, because we wore the natural deodorant, but whatever. You just have to think of
Yes,
it
I
as,
don't
well, I'm
care.
getting toxins out. I'll
Like,
never forget when I was in high school, I was at a party, and remember those baby doll shirts were in? So they're like
oh,
right up under your armpit. And I
just
was
love
wearing a gray one, and I had the biggest stains, and I was like mortified. I think I left.
Yes, yes. Then the older we get, we don't care, right?
Yeah, just like whatever. But the thing is, a lot of people too, if you don't feel well, you're probably not going to work out to the point of
Right.
sweating,
Mm.
So this is another reason I like the sauna, because you don't have to get to that level of exercise. You can just have the sauna do it for you. So, and one thing to note is, you want to make sure that you are sweating. Like if you're sitting in the sauna for 30 minutes and you're not sweating,
You got to
you
doing it.
do not
Yeah.
add a binder at
No.
all. You
Yeah.
have to be sweating. So make sure that that's a really important thing. We want you to start sweating within probably 10 minutes. So, and another good way to do that, a little hack that I've learned, is exercise first. And
Oh
and
yeah.
I'm not typically sweating when I'm exercising unless I'm running, which I don't do often, but maybe with leg day I might sweat a little bit. But anyway, but my body gets warmed up, and then I go in the sauna either after a walk or after I weight train, and I sweat so fast because of
Mhm.
that. So, little
Yeah,
hack.
it's nice to just get it all done too, if you're able to, right? In the mornings, work out, get it done, start your day off right, jump in the sauna, shower up, and you're ready for your day. But we all have different work schedules, and so do what's best for you. But that's the way that we really like it.
So just to recap, if you are having these symptoms, let's say you've done some other stuff, you've worked on your gut, you've worked on maybe mold, whatever, you've worked on stuff and you're just not your best. Or if you're really struggling and you've had exposure, this is what I would do. I would, number one, do a test. That
Mhm.
way you know what you're working with, and if what your level is, so you kind of know how aggressive you need to go at this. If you can work with somebody, work with someone, they'll walk you completely through it. That's what we do. Um, but if you're not, if you're doing this on your own, then you're going to want to take the more gentle approach. So you're going to want to do, um, those foods like cilantro, fulvic and humic acid, grapefruit pectin, garlic, onions, so sulfur-rich foods, and selenium. You want to take minerals. So you can get mineral blends. I think I've used is it mineral 650 from Pure Encapsulations? I think
A
that's
good
what it's
one.
called. I've used that with people when I do these heavy metal
This one too. That's
detoxes. Yeah, glutathione can be really good. It can be really good to help you open up those detox pathways if you tolerate it. So just try it at a small level first, and make sure you have your gentle detox in place. So whatever it is, if it's Epsom salt baths, foot baths, castor oil packs over the liver, dry brushing, lymphatic massage, or infrared sauna, movement, rebounding, all of those things. So that's kind of what you would do. So if you're working with a practitioner, you probably would be supporting your detox pathways and then using a binder when ready and pulling and eliminating. And if you're not, just go that more gentle route. And that's what you do. And it can take, it can take a while to get metals out of the body. It can take like a year sometimes.
yeah.
So, with all these things, they get so embedded in there in our tissues that they don't just pop right out and everything's fine. And this could have been going on for years, especially if it's coming from something like a filling and you've had them in for 20 years. That's 20 years of exposure you're working with. So just be gentle and patient with yourself. And, these are the steps that you can take, and you should start to feel better. And sometimes you feel a little bit worse before you feel better. But the key with that is knowing, you have a few days of feeling bad. If you're feeling
Mhm.
bad for a long time,
So
then you're going
important.
too fast and too far.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention too is and Beck and I talk about this stuff all the time, but we want to make sure this point isn't missed, is making sure you're pooping too.
Yeah.
That's another excreting thing that you need to be doing every day, along with, gentle detox with the things that she mentioned above. So if you're not pooping, there's a lot of, things that you can do to help that more. Castor oil packs are also great.
Yeah. And
Gentle
magnesium is really good.
magnesium.
Um, there's different things you can do. Mostly you want to know why you're not
Right.
pooping. I mean, if you you don't just want to go, oh, I'll take magnesium forever. You want to say why, So if it's you can have low motility from a thyroid issue or from bacterial overgrowth in the gut, there's a lot that can be going on. But yeah, you definitely want to be pooping. So my rule of thumb is if you are not pooping 1 to 3 times a day, and if you cannot sweat, do not pull anything. No
Just focus on
binders, not
those.
even maybe cilantro at that point. You
No.
want to really make sure you're pushing stuff out because you're just you're gonna swirl everything around if you don't get it out. So that's kind of my rule. Make sure you're doing that. And if you're not, work on gentle detox until you are. And then that's when you would start adding in the things like the binders and the foods.
And you will start to just give your body time, but you will start to feel better doing those very gentle things. You can always add things in later to pull too. Like just always think simple, so you don't get overwhelmed at first. We find there's so much information overload and all the things. So even if I'm going to concentrate on pooping every day, I'm going to sweat, I'm going to my body. I'm going to eat healthy. Right? It can be very simple, but most people don't do those simple things.
No, I
So
know. I was just laughing. I was like imagining someone like journaling. I'm going to concentrate
I
on
am going
pooping
to
today.
poop. Exactly.
All right,
Uh,
guys. Well, we hope you liked this episode. We hoped you got something from it, and we hope you have a great day.
We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, if you can pop over and leave a review, that would be awesome. You can also find us over at healthbabes.com, where you can find our courses, our latest book. We also are on Instagram at The Health Babes, at Dr. Becky Campbell, or at Dr. Crystal Hone. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.